My stepson's wife, Isabelle, invited me to a senior living home. I overheard her planning to sell my house, the home Arthur and I built, calling me a burden. I just smiled, pretending to be tired. They had no idea the fire they just lit. You think I'm old and weak? Oh, honey, you're about to be very wrong. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. The heavy cream cardstock, embossed with a silver oak leaf, felt strangely significant in my hand. It was a VIP invitation to Oak Ridge Senior Living, a place renowned for its luxury and its hefty price tag. The architect of this unsolicited gesture was none other than Isabelle Hayes, my stepson, Daniel's wife. I, Eleanor Vance, had received many invitations in my 75 years, but none had filled me with such a creeping sense of unease. Isabelle had called it a lovely outing, insisting I needed to explore my options now that Arthur, my beloved husband, had been gone for a year. Daniel, ever the dutiful son, had agreed to drive me, though his silence on the matter was telling. The morning air was crisp, and the manicured lawns of Oak Ridge gleamed under the autumn sun as Daniel pulled up to the grand entrance. The building itself looked less like a nursing home and more like a five-star hotel, with its towering columns and polished brass. I stepped out of the car, feeling a familiar ache in my knees, a reminder of the years that had passed. Inside, the lobby smelled of fresh flowers and expensive furniture polish. A woman with a name tag reading, Miss Davis, Senior Living Advisor, greeted us warmly. She was impeccably dressed and spoke with a practiced, soothing tone. As she began her spiel, directing us toward the main lounge for a brief introductory video, I excused myself, claiming a sudden need for the ladies' room. It was a small fib, but I just needed a moment to gather my thoughts before embarking on what felt like a pre-arranged sales pitch for my own future. I walked down a brightly lit corridor, following the elegant signs. As I rounded a corner near what looked like an administrative office, I heard voices, hushed but clear. One was Isabelle's, unmistakable with its slightly sharp edges. The other, a deeper male voice, sounded professional, likely an administrator. I paused, tucked discreetly out of sight by a large potted fern, an instinctual hesitation holding me back from revealing my presence. "And so, Mr. Sterling," Isabelle was saying, her voice dropping to an even more conspiratorial tone, "we simply need to make sure this is the right fit. It's time to get rid of this burden." The words hit me like a physical blow. Burden. My heart hammered against my ribs, a sudden, fierce drumbeat. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to quiet the tremor that ran through me. Was she talking about me? Surely not. My mind raced, trying to find an alternative explanation, but the context felt too specific, too personal. The male voice, calm and measured, replied, "Of course, Miss Hayes. We understand these transitions can be challenging for families. We ensure all our residents feel valued and at home." Isabelle scoffed softly. "Oh, she'll be fine. Once we sell her house, there will be more than enough to cover the fees for years. Plus, we'll finally be able to send the twins to that private school." My blood ran cold. The twins. Her children. My grandchildren. In a way. The house. My home. My sanctuary. The truth, stark and brutal, slammed into me. This wasn't an outing. This was an eviction plan, cloaked in false concern, designed to line their pockets. They were discussing my entire life, my future, as if I were a piece of furniture to be moved or an old account to be settled. My home. The home Arthur and I had built together, brick by brick, dream by dream, over 40 years. Every nail, every coat of paint, every garden bed held a memory. It was where we'd celebrated Christmases, mourned losses, laughed until our sides ached. It was where I had raised Daniel, where his small handprints were still faintly visible in the garage floor cement. It wasn't just wood and plaster. It was the physical embodiment of my life with Arthur, of our love, of our family. Now, to Isabelle, it was merely an asset, a sum of money to fund her twins' elite education. The sheer audacity, the cold-hearted calculation, was almost unfathomable. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. My vision blurred slightly, but I willed the tears away. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Not here. Not now. I took a deep, shaky breath, slowly backing away from the corner, needing a moment to compose myself before anyone could see the devastation etched on my face. A few minutes later, I rejoined Miss Davis, who was smiling patiently. She gestured toward a brightly lit common area, filled with cheerful residents engaged in various activities. "Mrs. Vance, are you all right? You look a little pale." Her voice was genuinely concerned. I managed a weak smile. "Just a little tired, I suppose. It's been a long morning." The lie felt brittle on my tongue, but it was enough to deflect her concern. She nodded understandingly. "Of course. Perhaps we should take a seat for a moment before we continue the tour?" The thought of continuing the tour, pretending interest in their spacious apartments and daily activities, was nauseating. Every manicured garden and cheerful resident now seemed like a part of their elaborate scheme. I couldn't stomach another minute of this charade. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I think I've seen enough for today." Miss Davis looked surprised, but professional. "Oh, are you sure? We haven't even seen the crafts room or the beautiful dining hall yet." "I'm quite sure," I replied, a hint of steel entering my tone. "I appreciate your time, but I need to get going." My need to escape was urgent, paramount. I needed silence, privacy, to process this shocking betrayal. Miss Davis, sensing my resolve, led me back to the main entrance. Daniel was already there, leaning against the polished marble wall, scrolling on his phone. He looked up, a practiced, almost too bright smile appearing on his face. "How was the tour, Pam? Impressive place, isn't it?" Pam? The casual slip of another woman's name, or perhaps just his general inattention, was a small, stinging insult added to the pile. He didn't even know my name properly. Not really. Not when it mattered. I fought the urge to correct him, to unleash the fury bubbling beneath my calm exterior. Instead, I forced a tight smile. "Very impressive, Daniel," I said, my voice carrying an edge he hopefully wouldn't detect. "You and Isabelle have obviously put a lot of thought into this." The words were laced with a bitter irony that only I understood. He seemed to miss it entirely, nodding earnestly as we walked towards the car. "Well, we just want what's best for you, Mom. Really. Since Dad passed, we've been worried about you alone in that big house. It's so much to manage, you know? And it's not safe." He spoke with the practiced cadence of someone reciting a well-rehearsed script, devoid of genuine warmth. "Peace of mind," I echoed softly, settling into the passenger seat. The words tasted like ash. As Daniel started the car and began the drive home, my gaze fixed on the passing scenery, blurred by my simmering anger. They thought I was a frail, forgetful old woman, easily manipulated and quietly shuffled away. They thought I was a burden to be gotten rid of. They saw my home as a piggy bank, a silent, cold decision solidified in my heart. They had no idea the fire they had just ignited. They thought they had me figured out. But I was Eleanor Vance, and I was about to show them exactly how wrong they were. The game, I realized with a chilling clarity, was only just beginning. The words "time to get rid of this burden" echoed in my head, a cruel mantra that robbed me of sleep for nights after the Oak Ridge visit. I tossed and turned in the big bed Arthur and I had shared for decades, the silence of the house amplifying Isabelle's cold declaration. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside my window, seemed to whisper her contempt. My home, my refuge, now felt tainted by their greedy scheme. The images of Isabelle's eyes darting around the house, mentally calculating its worth, replayed endlessly. I knew I had to act. But how? The answer came, or rather, the next stage of their plan unfolded. Just a few days later, Daniel called, his voice unusually cheerful. "Mom, Isabelle and I thought we'd stop by tonight. We're bringing your favorite Italian takeout from Luigi's. No fuss for you, just relax." My favorite Italian food. It was a nice gesture, or at least, it was meant to appear as one. But after what I'd overheard, every move they made felt calculated. I agreed, trying to keep my voice neutral, a small knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The evening was going to be an ordeal, I knew. I spent the afternoon cleaning, not for them, but for my own peace of mind, tidying away the visual clutter of my grief for Arthur, presenting an image of a woman who was coping, not one to be easily dismissed. When they arrived, Isabelle, as always, was a whirlwind of false cheer. "Eleanor, you look wonderful," she gushed, eyeing my simple blouse with an overly bright smile. "That color really brings out your eyes." Her compliments felt thin, transparent, like tracing paper. She bustled into my kitchen, setting down the takeout bags, but then, without invitation, she began to flutter around, opening cabinets, peering into the pantry. It was as if she were already taking inventory, mentally rearranging my life, claiming ownership. You have so much beautiful crockery, Eleanor," she remarked, running a finger along a stack of plates Arthur had bought me for our 10th anniversary. Such a shame to have it all hidden away. Daniel, meanwhile, was meticulously setting the table, avoiding eye contact as he arranged the plastic forks and napkins. The air was thick with unspoken agendas. As we ate the surprisingly bland lasagna, they steered the conversation, inevitably, to Oakridge. "Honestly, Mom, those gardens at Oakridge were spectacular, weren't they?" Daniel began, clearly picking up where they'd left off. "Did you see the community planting beds? You could still have your green thumb active." Isabelle chimed in. "Yes, Eleanor, imagine. Fresh herbs, maybe even a few tomatoes, right there on your doorstep. You love gardening so much." Her tone was saccharine, carefully crafted. I took a slow bite of my lasagna, choosing my words carefully. "Small consolation for leaving my own garden behind." "I suppose," I stated quietly, letting the words hang in the air. My garden, a riot of roses and hydrangeas, was my sanctuary, a living testament to years of nurturing. It was an extension of Arthur and me. The thought of abandoning it for a neatly organized patch filled me with a quiet despair. They exchanged a quick, almost imperceptible glance. Then, Daniel launched into their well-rehearsed concerns. "Mom, we're just worried about you, truly. Alone in this big house, the stairs, for instance. You almost fell the other day." He embellished, turning a slight stumble over a rug into a near-fatal accident. "And the maintenance? That leaky faucet in the bathroom? And the yard work? Mom, it's too much for one person." I looked at him, my gaze unwavering. "Especially someone my age?" I finished for him, the question sharp, pointed. Daniel flushed slightly, caught off guard. "Well, yes, Mom. You know, it's just, we want you to be safe." He fumbled for another excuse. "Remember that lunch date you forgot last week, with Mrs. Henderson?" I hadn't forgotten any lunch date. Mrs. Henderson had been away visiting her daughter. "And your gardener," Isabelle interjected smoothly. "He never showed up last month, did he? It's just not reliable. My gardener, Frank, had been tending my yard for 20 years and had never missed a day." The lies were clumsy, transparent, a desperate attempt to paint me as frail, forgetful, and incapable. While Daniel continued his spiel, Isabelle's eyes, bright and acquisitive, were scanning the living room. I watched her, pretending not to notice. Her gaze lingered on Arthur's vintage record collection, neatly shelved, each album a memory. Then it moved to my grandmother's silver tea service, gleaming softly in the dim light from the dining room. My antique writing desk, the Persian rug, the oil painting of Arthur's grandfather. Each item was being catalogued, evaluated, her mind clearly calculating the potential profit. She wasn't looking at a home. She was looking at an estate sale. She eventually turned back to me, her voice sweet as honey. "You know, Eleanor," she purred, "we could really help you sort through everything, decide what to take with you to Oakridge, make the move much easier." I met her gaze, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "And what about everything that doesn't fit?" I asked, my voice calm, but with an underlying current that I hoped she wouldn't miss. Daniel cleared his throat, sensing the shift in the air. He finally let the pretense drop, just a little. Well, Mom, the market is really strong right now. Property values are incredibly high. It would make sense to sell while prices are high, you know? Maximize the return. The mask slipped, revealing the true motive. It wasn't about my safety or my peace of mind. It was about money. Their money. After dinner, as I was clearing the table, Isabelle reached into her purse and pulled out a crisp white envelope. "Oh, before we go," she said, her voice a little too casual, "we picked up some more information from Oak Ridge for you to look through. They have an opening next month that we've tentatively reserved." No pressure, of course. The words "no pressure" felt like a direct insult, given the circumstances. I took the brochure, the heavy paper feeling like a stone in my hand. It was glossy, filled with smiling, active seniors, beautiful facilities, a gilded cage. I watched them leave, their car pulling away from the curb, leaving me in the quiet darkness of my big, unsafe house. I sat at the kitchen table, the brochure spread before me, its vibrant images mocking me. The weight of their betrayal, their casual cruelty, pressed down on me. They thought they had me cornered, that I would meekly accept their plans. They thought I was a burden, easily moved aside. But they had profoundly underestimated Eleanor Vance. I would not sign away my home and my freedom without a fight. This was my home, my life, and I was far from done. The gaslighting began subtly, a creeping fog designed to make me question my own mind. After that dreadful dinner, Daniel and Isabelle's visits intensified. They were no longer sporadic but frequent, each one a calculated performance filled with fabricated incidents, all designed to portray me as increasingly incapable, a danger to myself. One morning, Daniel arrived unannounced, bursting in with a worried expression. "Mom," he said, holding up my medication organizer. "I noticed your medication organizer wasn't filled correctly. Your blood pressure pills are in the wrong slot." He shook his head gravely. "It's so important to get these right, you know." I stared at the plastic box. I was meticulous about my medications, double-checking them every Sunday evening. I knew I hadn't made that mistake. The pills were in the wrong slots now, but they hadn't been when I went to bed. A chill ran down my spine. A few days later, I came downstairs after my morning shower to a strange smell. A faint odor of something scorched. There was Isabelle in my kitchen, standing by the stove, a look of wide-eyed concern on her face. "Thank goodness I stopped by early, Eleanor," she exclaimed, her voice trembling slightly. The stove burner was left on low, empty and scorched. "Pamela, you could have started a fire." She gestured dramatically at the faint black ring on the electric burner, which I certainly hadn't left on. The casual use of Pamela again, a dismissal, as if my actual name wasn't important enough to remember. My own name. I felt a surge of anger, but I held it back, keeping my expression neutral. Later that day, my neighbor Brenda called. Her voice was hesitant, laced with a new kind of worry. "Eleanor, are you sure you didn't leave the stove on this morning? That could be dangerous, dear." The seeds of doubt were being planted, not just for Daniel and Isabelle, but for the people in my life who genuinely cared about me. It was a cruel, insidious tactic. Then came the disappearing acts. My checkbook vanished from its usual spot in my desk drawer. I searched for 3 days, growing increasingly agitated, before Daniel found it. "Mom," he said, pulling it out of the freezer, nestled between bags of frozen vegetables. "Why would you put your checkbook in the freezer? You could have ruined it." He looked at me with an expression of profound concern, as if I had truly lost my mind. My checkbook in the freezer? It was absurd. I would never do such a thing. After that, other things started to go missing. My spare house keys, which I always kept on a hook by the back door, were gone. Important mail, specifically a bill from the property tax office, disappeared from the counter for several days before reappearing in an odd spot, crumpled. My doctor's appointment, scheduled weeks in advance, was mysteriously canceled, forcing me to reschedule and endure another lecture from Daniel about my supposed forgetfulness. Each incident was small, yet together they formed a pattern, a relentless chipping away at my confidence and credibility. One afternoon, I returned home from a short walk to find Isabelle in my bedroom. She was standing by my dresser, a drawer pulled open, her hand hovering over my neatly folded sweaters. She jumped slightly when she saw me, her eyes wide with a practiced innocence. "Oh, Eleanor, I didn't hear you come in. I was just looking for a sweater for you. I thought you might be cold." She held up a thin cardigan, one I hadn't worn in years. The audacity of her, rummaging through my private belongings, was infuriating. This was no longer just about my house. It was about invading my personal space, my life. The most chilling blow came a few days later. My phone rang, and it was Dr. Miller, my physician for over 15 years. A kind and thorough man who knew me well. His voice, usually warm, was now tinged with a professional gravity. "Eleanor," he began, "your son, Daniel, contacted me with some concerns about your memory and safety at home. He's requested a cognitive assessment." My blood ran cold. This was it. They weren't just trying to convince me. They were actively involving medical professionals, leveraging their authority to gain legal control, to declare me unfit, and push me into Oak Ridge. This was moving faster, and more aggressively, than I had anticipated. A cognitive assessment, if it wasn't carefully managed, could be used against me, regardless of its true findings. It was a terrifying thought. I tried to call my friend Helen, hoping for some reassurance, some solidarity. Helen had always been a rock, a sensible voice in my life. But it was her daughter, Sarah, who answered. "Mom's not feeling well today, Mrs. Vance," Sarah said, her voice sounding sympathetic, almost pitying. "She mentioned you've been having some difficulties lately. Daniel's been keeping us updated. Daniel's been keeping us updated." The phrase echoed in my ears, heavy with implication. He wasn't just gaslighting me. He was isolating me, painting a picture of a deteriorating old woman to my friends, my social circle. They were systematically cutting me off, making sure that when I tried to speak out, no one would believe me. I hung up, feeling a profound sense of isolation. The house, usually a comfort, now felt like a trap. Doubt, for a fleeting moment, began to creep in. Was I really forgetting things? Was I truly becoming that frail, confused old woman they painted me to be? But then, the anger, cold and steady, pushed through. No. This was gaslighting. This was a deliberate, systematic undermining of my credibility, my sanity, my very self. They were trying to break me. I took a deep breath, pushing away the fear, allowing the resolve to harden. They thought I was a puppet on their strings, but I was about to cut those strings. I made two crucial decisions that evening. First, I would install small, inconspicuous security cameras throughout the house, not just for proof, but for my own peace of mind, to know that I wasn't going crazy. Second, I would return to Oak Ridge Senior Living, not as a future resident, meekly accepting my fate, but as an investigator. I needed answers, and I needed to understand the full extent of their plan. The game had just changed. The decision to return to Oak Ridge Senior Living felt like stepping into the lion's den, but I knew it was a necessary risk. I hailed a taxi, instructing the driver to drop me a block away, not wanting Daniel or Isabelle's car to be seen at my house. Walking the remaining distance, the manicured lawns and stately columns of Oak Ridge now seemed less like a gilded cage and more like a battleground. Inside, the polite receptionist greeted me. "May I help you, Mrs.?" she began. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Sterling," I said, omitting my last name. "I don't have an appointment, but it's important." I avoided offering a reason, knowing any detail could trace back to Daniel and Isabelle. Mr. Sterling, I was informed, was in a meeting and wouldn't be available for at least an hour. Rather than wait in the main lobby, where I might be recognized by someone Isabelle had spoken to, I chose the solace of the garden, a beautiful, sprawling space filled with autumn blossoms and quiet pathways. I settled onto a bench beneath a weeping willow, the gentle rustle of its leaves, a calming presence. Just as I was beginning to feel a sliver of peace, a young woman approached. She was in a nurse's uniform, her name tag reading Lena. I recognized her from the reception area during my previous visit. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that immediately put me at ease. I remember you from the tour the other day. It's a lovely spot, isn't it? I nodded, a little surprised she remembered my name. Lena sat beside me, keeping a respectful distance. It's not as bad as it looks, she said, almost to herself, watching the residents stroll by. Some of these folks are actually happy here. The ones who chose to come, that is. Her voice was quiet, thoughtful. Then she turned to me, her eyes meeting mine, and a flicker of understanding passed between us. And the ones who didn't choose? She asked pointedly, her voice barely a whisper. Those are the ones I worry about. My heart skipped a beat. She knew. She understood the unspoken truth. The dam of my carefully constructed composure threatened to break. My daughter-in-law has been quite persistent about securing your placement here, Lena continued, her tone empathetic. Isabelle isn't my daughter-in-law, I corrected her gently, the distinction feeling suddenly important. She's married to my stepson. Lena nodded slowly. Ah, I see. Well, she certainly gives off a strong impression of being in charge of your affairs. She paused, then took a deep breath. Mrs. Vance, I heard what she said the other day. About getting rid of this burden. And about selling your house for her children's school. Her eyes searched mine, full of a quiet resolve. I couldn't help my own grandmother when something similar happened to her. She was pushed into a home against her will by my aunt and uncle. They wanted her inheritance. Her voice was thick with regret. I couldn't help her then. But maybe, she looked at me directly. Maybe I can help you now. Tears pricked at my eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of immense relief, of an unexpected, vital connection. Here, in the very place designed to trap me, an ally had emerged. What can I do? I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Lena reached into the pocket of her uniform and pressed a small, discreet business card into my hand. Speak with Samuel Grant, she urged, her voice firm. He's an attorney who specializes in elder rights. He's very good. And he understands these kinds of situations. She looked around discreetly, then leaned in closer. And Mrs. Vance, it's crucial that you document everything. Every single incident, every conversation, every suspicious occurrence. Keep a journal, notes, anything you can. Dates, times, specific details. It will be invaluable. For the first time in weeks, a powerful flicker of hope ignited within me. Not just hope, but the stirrings of a plan. Concrete and actionable. Lena had given me a lifeline. A path forward out of the suffocating isolation. I thanked her, the gratitude immense and unspoken. And then, feeling a renewed sense of purpose, I left Oak Ridge, walking with a lighter step. Back home, the first thing I did was call Samuel Grant's office from my landline, wanting to avoid any digital trail on my cell phone. His assistant was polite and efficient. I scheduled an appointment for the very next day. This couldn't wait. Later that afternoon, the security cameras I had ordered online arrived. Small, discreet, and easy to install. I spent hours meticulously placing them, positioning them strategically in the main living areas. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway downstairs. I tested each one, ensuring they were connected to my Wi-Fi and set to upload footage directly to a secure cloud account, a digital fortress against their manipulations. Now, every staged incident, every whispered lie, would be recorded. The truth would have its witness. I had just finished setting up the last camera when Daniel arrived, unannounced as usual, carrying a box of bakery muffins. His timing was almost comical. "Mom," he chirped, holding up the box. "Thought you might like some fresh blueberry muffins." He tried to project an image of casual concern, but his eyes, I noticed, kept darting around the room, assessing, evaluating. He sat opposite me at the kitchen table, pushing a muffin towards me. "Mom, Isabelle and I have been talking," he began, his voice taking on that familiar, overly earnest tone. "We think it might be good to have someone come stay with you for a while. just until we figure out a more permanent arrangement. A caregiver, you know, to help out with things. And then, maybe we could arrange an assessment for your transition care. A caregiver, an assessment for transition care. The walls were closing in, but now, I had my own secret weapons. I met his gaze, my expression calm, unyielding. That won't be necessary, Daniel, I said, my voice firm. I'm managing just fine on my own. No need for a caregiver or any transition arrangements. He tried to protest, to push, but I simply shook my head, my resolve unwavering. He eventually gave up, clearly frustrated, and left soon after, his muffins untouched. As his car pulled away, I glanced at the small, almost invisible camera nestled on the bookshelf. It was recording. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a powerful sense of control. Samuel Grant's office, surprisingly, was not the sterile, intimidating space I had imagined. It was warm, filled with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. And the scent of old books. He was a man with kind eyes and a thoughtful demeanor, instantly putting me at ease. As I sat across from him, I recounted everything, starting from the VIP invitation to Oak Ridge, Isabelle's cruel words overheard in the hallway, the gaslighting incidents with the stove and the checkbook, the doctor's appointment cancellation, and Daniel's casual suggestion of a caregiver. I spoke for what felt like hours, detailing every suspicious event, every unsettling conversation, every planted doubt. He listened intently, occasionally nodding or jotting down notes. When I finished, a silence hung in the air, heavy with the weight of my story. Mrs. Vance, Samuel began, his voice calm and reassuring. What you're describing is unfortunately not uncommon. I've handled dozens of cases where adult children, or in your case, stepchildren, and their spouses, try to establish a pattern of incompetence to gain control of a parent's assets. A wave of relief washed over me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. But they can't just force me out, can they? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He leaned forward, his expression firm. Not without due process, Mrs. Vance. And not if you're deemed competent. You don't have to surrender voluntarily. He then outlined a quiet, methodical strategy, a legal defense built on solid ground. First, he advised securing my assets. We need to protect your home and finances immediately. We'll establish a revocable trust for your property. This makes it much harder for anyone to simply sell your house out from under you. He also suggested updating my will, adding specific language that clearly stated my wishes regarding assisted living and who was authorized to make decisions on my behalf. This would ensure my choices were legally documented and respected. Next, and crucially, Samuel emphasized the need for an independent assessment of my cognitive health. Dr. Miller's assessment, requested by Daniel, will be tainted by their influence. We need to counter that with an unbiased report. He referred me to Dr. Evelyn Reed, a highly respected geriatric specialist known for her thorough and objective evaluations. An independent assessment will establish baseline evidence of your competence, making it difficult for them to claim you're mentally declining. Armed with Samuel's advice, I set about strengthening my defenses. I immediately went to see Susan, my bank manager, a woman I had trusted for years. I explained, in carefully chosen words, that I wanted to make some changes to my financial arrangements without alarming her or hinting at the family drama. I established new accounts at a different bank, transferring a significant portion of my liquid assets, and set up automatic payments for all my essential bills. This would give me financial independence and prevent Daniel or Isabelle from gaining access to my funds, should they try to exert control. My appointment with Dr. Evelyn Reed was a revelation. Unlike Dr. Miller, who had approached me with a predetermined air of concern, Dr. Reed was warm, engaging, and genuinely interested. We spent a full afternoon together, going through a comprehensive battery of tests, memory exercises, problem-solving puzzles, conversational assessments. At the end of it, she smiled kindly. Mrs. Vance, she stated, her voice clear and authoritative, I see no evidence of cognitive impairment whatsoever. In fact, your mental acuity is exceptional for your age. You are perfectly capable of managing your own affairs. She promised a detailed report for Samuel Grant. It was another victory, a crucial piece of my defense. The very next evening, my security cameras proved their worth. I was reading in my living room when my phone pinged with an alert. Motion detected in the kitchen. I opened the app and watched in real time as Daniel let himself in, using an emergency key I'd forgotten he had. He walked straight to my medication organizer, which I had deliberately left out on the counter. My heart pounded as I watched him, on video, take 2 pills from my evening medication slot and replace them with different ones from a small vial he pulled from his pocket. He then rearranged the other pills, making it look as though I had messed up my own dosage. My hands trembled as I immediately called Samuel. I have it on video, I told him, my voice tight with controlled fury. He's tampering with my medication. Samuel instructed me to take the 2 replaced pills, along with a couple of my actual pills from the same slot, and bring them to his office first thing in the morning. He would have them analyzed. 2 days later, the lab results confirmed my worst fears. The pills Daniel had swapped into my organizer were a mild sedative, not prescribed to me, just enough to induce confusion, drowsiness, and memory issues. Precisely the symptoms they wanted to attribute to me. The evidence was irrefutable. Despite this shocking discovery, I maintained my facade of normalcy with Daniel and Isabelle. I even allowed the caregiver assessment they had pushed for, knowing the cameras were silently recording every interaction. The assessment, conducted by an independent agency, concluded that I was managing well and did not require full-time care. Another small win, bolstering my case. Samuel, however, remained cautious. "They'll escalate, Eleanor," he warned during one of our calls. "They've invested too much time and energy in this plan to give up easily." He was right. 3 weeks after the caregiver assessment, my world was once again disrupted. I was enjoying a quiet morning tea when Daniel and Isabelle arrived unannounced, their faces grim, and this time, they weren't alone. Standing behind them, looking uncomfortable and avoiding my gaze, was Dr. Miller. The next phase of their attack had begun. The atmosphere in my living room was thick with unspoken tension. Daniel, Isabelle, and Dr. Miller sat stiffly on my antique sofa and armchairs, their faces a carefully constructed blend of concern and authority. They had convened, as Daniel put it, to discuss my next steps to Oak Ridge. Dr. Miller, looking uncomfortable, held a folder, no doubt filled with Daniel's skewed reports. My hands were steady as I offered them tea, the delicate porcelain clinking softly. I poured 3 cups, adding a touch of honey to mine. I sat down in my favorite armchair, facing them, and took a slow, deliberate sip. Then, I met Daniel's gaze, my voice calm, almost conversational. "Daniel, Isabelle," I began, my eyes flicking between them. "Would you like to tell me why you've been tampering with my medication and creating false incidents to make me appear incompetent?" The room fell silent, the quiet so profound you could hear the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Daniel's face drained of color, then flushed crimson. Isabelle's jaw dropped, her practiced smile dissolving into a gaping stare. Dr. Miller shifted uneasily, his gaze darting between us. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Daniel finally managed, his voice tight, a forced indignation in his tone. "That's a ridiculous accusation. We're only trying to help you." I simply smiled, a cool, knowing smile that chilled them more than any outburst. "I think a demonstration might be helpful," I said, reaching for the remote control. I pressed a button, and the large television screen in my living room flickered to life. The first clip showed Daniel, letting himself in with his emergency key, walking to my medication organizer, and then, clearly, deliberately, swapping out my pills. The timestamp glowed in the corner. The next clip showed Isabelle, hands hovering over the stove burner, then her sudden dramatic reaction to the scorched empty pot. Another clip followed, Daniel pulling my checkbook from the freezer, looking at the camera, then looking away, feigning surprise. Each incident, perfectly captured, undeniable. Dr. Miller's face paled further with each segment. He visibly recoiled, shaking his head slowly. Daniel and Isabelle watched, horrified, their carefully constructed narrative crumbling before their very eyes. Just as the last clip faded, the doorbell chimed. "Perfect timing," I said, a faint smile touching my lips. I rose and opened the door. Standing on my porch were Samuel Grant, Lena from Oak Ridge, and Dr. Evelyn Reed. "Please, come in," I invited them, gesturing to the stunned trio in my living room. We were just discussing my mental competence. Samuel Grant stepped forward, his presence commanding. He looked directly at Daniel, his voice clear and firm. "I'm Samuel Grant, Mrs. Vance's attorney, and you must be Daniel, the stepson who's been drugging your stepmother and systematically attempting to gain control of her assets by undermining her mental faculties." Lena, surprisingly confident, stepped forward too. "Is that what you call it?" she interjected, her eyes flashing with anger as she looked at Isabelle. "I've been documenting your visits to Oak Ridge, Mrs. Hayes, including your charming comment about getting rid of this burden. We have a strict policy against elder exploitation at Oak Ridge, and you, madam, will be blacklisted from any of our facilities." Dr. Evelyn Reed, elegant and professional, addressed Dr. Miller directly. "Dr. Miller, I'm Dr. Evelyn Reed. I recently conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment of Mrs. Vance. I can confirm, unequivocally, that she exhibits no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. Her mental acuity is exceptional." I held up a document, and as for the tampering with my medication, I added, my voice cutting through the stunned silence, "these are the lab results." The pills Daniel swapped were a mild sedative not prescribed to me, enough to make me seem confused, forgetful. "Would you like to see the results, Dr. Miller?" Dr. Miller, looking utterly mortified, stammered, "No, Mrs. Vance, that won't be necessary. This is—" I had no idea. He looked at Daniel and Isabelle with a mixture of disgust and professional outrage. Daniel, seeing his entire scheme collapse, made one last, desperate attempt at denial. "Mom, you're confused. We were trying to help you. You're clearly unwell." "Stop," I said, my voice rising, finally allowing a hint of the fury that had simmered for weeks to surface. "No more gaslighting. I've documented everything. I watched you switch my pills with my own eyes. I watched Isabelle stage the stove incident. I know exactly what you've been doing." My eyes burned into his. I stood, my resolve absolute, and delivered my ultimatum. "I won't be moving to Oak Ridge. I won't be selling this house. And most importantly, I won't be allowing either of you to make decisions about my life ever again." I paused, letting the words sink in. "You are no longer welcome in my home." Samuel Grant then stepped forward, holding out a thick envelope to a shell-shocked Daniel. "This is a cease and desist order," he explained, "prohibiting any further contact or interference with Mrs. Vance, and I've already filed a police report regarding the medication tampering. Rest assured, the authorities will be investigating your actions thoroughly." Daniel and Isabelle, utterly defeated, stumbled out of my house, their dreams of my fortune shattered. Dr. Miller offered a profuse apology and left shortly after, promising to take appropriate action. In the following months, my life transformed. The fear and isolation lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and purposeful strength. I embraced a new, vibrant chapter. I joined a community garden, fulfilling my love for plants, and took a watercolor class, discovering a talent I never knew I possessed. I even began mentoring young women at the local community center, sharing my experiences and encouraging them to find their own voices. Daniel attempted reconciliation a few times, sending apologies and even flowers, but my trust was broken beyond repair. The foundation of our relationship, built on a lifetime of quiet acceptance, had been shattered by his blatant greed and betrayal. Isabelle, predictably, filed for divorce from Daniel a few months later, unable to reconcile with his failures. Lena, the kind nurse who had offered me a lifeline, became a dear friend, a testament to the unexpected connections born from adversity. I found not just peace, but purpose, and a quiet strength I hadn't realized I possessed. Their toxic attempt to discard me, to diminish me, had inadvertently led me to a richer, stronger, and more purposeful chapter of my life. My home, no longer just a house, was a symbol of my resilience, filled with new memories, and the warmth of a life truly lived on my own terms.